Welcome back. In this final part of our healthcare terminology series, we're going to pull back the curtain and explore the administrative machinery that really powers claims and reimbursements. We're talking about CPT and ICD codes, HCPCS, diagnosis-related groups, or DRGs, clearinghouses, coordination of benefits, and of course, denials. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by cracking the code, literally, by looking at the language of medical claims. Then we'll see how hospitals bundle everything together for payment. After that, we'll follow a claims journey through the digital world, untangle what happens when multiple insurers are involved, and finally, look at what happens when a claim gets the dreaded no. You know, when you think about it, how does a really complex medical procedure get boiled down to a single line on a bill? Well, it all starts with a story told through universal language of codes. So let's dive in and learn the basics of this language. All right, first up we have CPT codes. Think of these as the action words in the healthcare story. They tell the insurance company exactly what the doctor or provider did. So a code like 99213 might just look like a string of numbers, but to a payer, it's a clear signal for an established patient office visit. It's the essential shorthand for every single procedure. Okay, so if CPT codes are the what, then ICD codes are the why. They explain the whole reason for the encounter, the diagnosis. This code answers that all-important question of medical necessity. You see, a procedure code doesn't mean much without a diagnosis code to justify it. But what about all the other stuff? You know, things that aren't exactly a physician's procedure. That is where HCPCS codes come into the picture. They cover that vital everything else category. Things like ambulance services, medical equipment like a ventilator, or even specific drugs. It really is the last piece of this coding puzzle. So when you look at them all together, you can see how these three systems work in harmony to tell a complete story. CPT provides the action, ICD gives the reason, and HCPCS fills in all the other details about supplies and equipment. If any one of these is missing or incorrect, the payer is left with an incomplete picture, and that's usually where the trouble starts. And that right there is why this is so important. A single typo, one wrong digit, or an old, outdated code can bring the entire payment process to a screeching halt. A rejected claim means payment gets delayed, and it creates a ton of extra administrative work. In this world, accuracy isn't just a goal, it's everything. Okay, now that we have those basic building blocks, the codes, let's see how they get used on a much bigger scale. When a patient is admitted to a hospital, things get a little more complex. It's not really about individual services anymore. It's about the entire stay. And this is where something called diagnosis-related groups, or DRGs, enter the scene. The easiest way to think about a DRG is like a flat fee pricing model. Instead of the hospital sending a bill for every single pill and bandage, the DRG system bundles the entire admission into one single payment, and that payment is based on the patient's main diagnosis. So a stay for a heart attack has one set price, and a stay for a knee replacement has another. So we've got our claim, it's all coded up, but how does it actually get from the provider's office to the hundreds of different insurance companies out there? I can tell you it's not by mail anymore. Today, it travels on a digital superhighway. And that superhighway has a very important hub called a clearinghouse. If you want a simple analogy, just think of it as a digital post office for medical claims. It gathers up claims from thousands of providers, makes sure they're all in a standard format, and then zips them off to the right insurance company all electronically and almost instantly. But a clearinghouse does way more than just sort digital mail. It's also like a quality control inspector. It scrubs every single claim, checking for common mistakes, invalid codes, or missing patient information before it even gets to the insurer. And that one step, it makes a huge difference. It slashes rejection rates and helps providers get paid much, much faster. Now, the claims journey can get even more complex. What happens in a situation where a patient has two insurance plans? Maybe you're on your own plan from work, but you're also covered by your spouse's plan. When there's a bill, who pays? Well, that's where a process called coordination of benefits, or COB, comes in. You can think of it as a rule book that all the insurance companies have agreed to follow. It helps them figure out who is the primary payer, that's the one who pays first, and who is the secondary. The whole point is simple. Make sure the claim gets paid correctly, but never paid twice for the same service. And the process itself is very logical, it's sequential. The bill always goes to the primary insurance first. They process it, they pay whatever their share is according to the plan. Then, and only after that, the leftover balance is sent over to the secondary insurance to see what they might cover. It's kind of like the traffic cop directing the flow of money. So now we arrive at the part of the journey that nobody wants to see, the dead end. What happens when, after all of that coding, scrubbing, and processing, the insurance company just says no? This is what we call a denial. It's the insurance company's official refusal to pay, and it can happen for a whole host of reasons. Maybe the service wasn't a covered benefit, or the patient's policy wasn't active, or maybe the payer just didn't think the treatment was medically necessary based on the codes that were sent in. Now, a denial isn't always the end of the road. There are appeals processes, but it's always a big headache for everyone involved. So the real question is, how do we avoid these roadblocks from happening in the first place? Really, it all boils down to being proactive, to doing the homework up front. First and foremost, that means verifying a patient's insurance coverage is active before they're even seen. Next, it's getting prior authorization or pre-approval for any services that need it. And finally, we circle right back to where we started, making sure the coding is absolutely 100% accurate. You know, when you take a step back and look at all these pieces together, you really start to see the big picture. These aren't just a bunch of random terms. They are the interlocking gears that make the massive financial engine of healthcare actually work. So let's do a quick recap of what we've covered. CPT, ICD, and HCPCS are the fundamental language of any claim. DRGs are how hospitals get paid in all-inclusive bundles. Clearinghouses act as the digital messengers that ensure clean claims. COB is the rulebook for handling multiple insurers. And denials? Well, they're the roadblocks that can often be prevented with the right process. These coding and administrative processes truly form the backbone of the revenue cycle. Knowing these terms, CPT, ICD, HCPCS, DRGs, Clearinghouse, COB, and denial will help you understand how medical services actually translate into reimbursement. This concludes our 3-part series on basic healthcare terminology. In upcoming videos, we'll build on this foundation with deeper dives into things like patient cost estimation, the nuances of specialty coding, and more. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.